The Pug and the Unicorn. Porky the Pug was so named because he was very fat. His owners had tried several methods to try and get him to lose weight. They had taken him on lots of walks, but that hadn't worked, because Porky was not only very fat, but very lazy too. They had tried giving him special diet food, which, again, didn't work because Porky loved his dry dog biscuits and refused to eat anything else. They had finally tried to reduce his meals down from 3 a day to 1 a day. But Porky was so incensed by this that he stood and barked for an entire hour before they finally got so fed up they had to give him his meals all at once, after which he was promptly sick. So eventually his owners had come to the conclusion that Porky was just going to have to remain a fat pug. He was a perfectly happy pug, though. He loved his little white kennel in the garden, with his name stenciled across the top of the door. He even had a little mirror in there, as he used to look at himself in mirrors when he was a puppy, and his owners found his reaction funny. He would bark at his reflection and paw at the glass. He still liked doing that. He loved watching the pigeons that fluttered down onto the lawn and strutted about after each other. Every time he saw them, he would rush out to try and play with them, but they always flew away. Then he would stand there and look upwards into the sky, wishing that he was able to fly too. When he went to sleep at night, he would dream that he was flying around after the pigeons and having a grand old time. One night, after having one of these dreams, he woke feeling very thirsty and waddled out of his kennel to get a drink of water. He abruptly stopped short. Somebody was already having a drink from his bowl. It was an enormous white horse with a spiring horn sticking out of its head. Porky sat down on his plump bottom and stared in bewilderment at this new visitor, and his little bulging eyes bulged even further from his face.
"Excuse me,"
he said. The stranger ignored him.
"I said excuse me."
The horse lifted its head out of the bowl. "I heard you," it said, and then carried on drinking.
Who are you, and why are you drinking my water?"
"I am a unicorn, and I am thirsty," it replied.
"You're also a thief,"
squeaked Porky. "And you're fat," replied the unicorn.
"How dare you," barked Porky. "You come into my garden, drink my water, and you then have the nerve to call me fat. If I weren't a dog, I'd call the police."
"But you are a dog, so I suppose we have to work this one out between us." Porky said nothing. He just sat there, shaking with anger. "All right," said the unicorn finally. "I apologize for stealing your water. It was most naughty of me. There, I've said it. Now, do you have something to say to me?" Porky wrinkled his nose and then grudgingly said,
"I apologize for calling you a thief."
"Apology accepted. So, now that we're friends, I can tell you why I'm here." Porky frowned. "You are here for a particular reason?" he asked.
"Yes."
"And what is that?"
"To get you some exercise."
"I beg your pardon. Like I said, you're fat. Sorry, but it's true. Your owners have tried everything they can. Now it's my turn. You're going to come flying with me." Porky's ears pricked up.
"Flying?"
he said.
"Did you say flying?"
"That's right."
"I must still be asleep," said Porky. "Pinch me."
But the unicorn couldn't pinch him, so he bit him instead. Porky squealed loudly.
"What did you do that for?"
"To convince you that you're not asleep. Now, in order to fly, I must first sneeze on you." And he did.
"That's disgusting," said Porky.
"No doubt. But now you can fly."
"Don't be ridiculous.
I can't fly just because we sneeze." Porky began floating upwards mid-speech. He kicked his little legs and squealed madly. "That's it," said the unicorn. "Keep kicking those legs. They are rather small, aren't they?" Porky floated up above his kennel.
I'm flying."
"You are. Not very gracefully, it has to be said, but it'll do."
"Where are we going?"
"I have a few errands to take care of." And with that the unicorn jumped into the air. Porky began kicking like a demented puppy and followed after him. They rose high above the garden and flew off over the town.
"This is incredible,"
squealed Porky. "Yes, everything looks different up here. It's very beautiful at night."
"What errands do you have to do?"
asked Porky. "First, I have to deliver a message to Mr. Hogg. The road he lives near is very busy at the moment. I have to warn him not to cross it."
"Mr. Hogg? Who's he?"
"Hedge," said the unicorn.
"I thought you said his name was Hogg."
"I did."
"Then why did you say Hedge?"
"Because that's what he is."
"A hedge?"
"Hogg."
"I'm now thoroughly confused," said Porky.
"He's a hedgehog, you daft pug," shouted the unicorn.
"Oh, well, excuse me,"
said Porky in a huff. They flew over a sausage factory.
"Sausages!"
squealed Porky.
Don't even think about it, said the unicorn. Keep flying. You're doing well.
So, what are we doing after we warn Mr. Hodgehog off his busy road?
We then have to tell the heron in the park not to eat all the fish in the pond because the children like to look at them.
What's a heron?
A big bird, replied the unicorn.
What else does he eat? Asked Porky.
He's been known to eat pugs, especially plump ones like you. They flew on. 10 minutes later the unicorn began to descend, and Porky followed after him. They landed on a pavement. Wait here, said the unicorn. Mr. Hogg doesn't like strangers.
Neither do I,
mumbled Porky under his breath, especially ones who drink my water. Porky sat and stared after the unicorn as it trotted away into a nearby garden. His big eyes now began to stray. They strayed towards a pile of bin bags that had been ripped open by seagulls, exposing their contents. Porky made a beeline for them, and fairly soon found a half-eaten baguette with a ham and mustard filling. He picked it up. "Oi, fatso! Put that down and follow me." He turned to see the unicorn. "Couldn't I just—" "No, you couldn't. Now let go." Porky dropped the sandwich and followed the unicorn back up into the sky. They turned east towards the park. When they landed again, it was right next to a large pond. Porky was a little nervous now after what the unicorn had told him. Did the heron really eat fat pugs? He stood there, looking around him for his big, bug-eating bird. It suddenly emerged from the reeds with a huge flapping of its wings. Porky squealed in alarm and ran towards the unicorn for protection. "What's his problem?" asked the heron. "Oh, he thinks you might eat him." The heron made a squawking noise, which was actually a laugh. "Me? Eat pugs? What have you been telling him?" "That you're eating too many fish." "I'm a heron. That's what I do." "Perhaps then you could feed somewhere else other than here. The problem is there is a shortage of fish in this pond because you've eaten them. Children come to this park primarily to watch the fish swimming around. If you eat them all, there are going to be a lot of disappointed children." "I don't like children," said the heron. "They make too much noise and scare away the fish before I have a chance to catch them." "All the more reason to go somewhere quieter, would you agree?" The heron thought about that for a moment. "Yeah, I suppose so," he said. The unicorn and Porky now walked along the side of the pond together. Porky's legs were tired from all that flying, and he waddled along now like an old man. "How are you feeling?" asked the unicorn.
"Sore," replied Porky. "By your expression and your grumpiness, I would say you're feeling the same way."
The unicorn now sighed and drooped his head. "You're right," he said. "The truth is I hate my life. All I seem to do is run these silly errands."
"Why do you?" asked Porky.
"Because that's what a unicorn has to do," he said. "It is our duty to make sure everything is as it should be. We are there to help people and animals. It is the way it has been done for millennia. But I'm fed up now. I am 100 years old, which is young for us unicorns, and already I've fed enough. There's no more fun in life. I used to chase my friends around in the cumulus clouds. I used to jump over rivers and forests like they were nothing more than hurdles. But I love nothing better than lying in those forests under the moonlight and joking with the fairies. Very, very witty little things are fairies. Now it's all work and no play."
"Then let's do that," said Porky. "It sounds like great fun to me."
The unicorn looked at him.
"Come on," said Porky. "Chase me."
And with that he leapt into the air. The unicorn jumped after him.
"You never told me your name," shouted Porky.
"Indigo," replied the unicorn, laughing. They soared higher and higher into the sky, Porky kicking his little legs like he was in a swimming race, and Indigo galloping through the air. He fairly soon caught up with Porky. "Now you have to chase me," said Indigo. The unicorn cantered up into the clouds, and Porky went charging after him, barking wildly. This was great fun, just like his dreams. But instead of chasing pigeons, he was chasing a beautiful white unicorn. He actually wondered for a moment if he wasn't just a dream after all. Porky emerged from the fluffy white vapour and found himself in another world entirely. It was jaw-dropping. A full moon shone its light on a landscape of soft, rolling clouds as far as his little round eyes could see. He came to an abrupt halt and just floated there, staring.
This is...
"Magical?" said Indigo.
"Magical. Beautiful. Stunning,"
squeaked Porky. His little pink tongue was lolling out of his mouth. Indigo laughed. "It is something animals never see, which I always think is a shame. Humans can see it, they just need to go in a plane. I think if more animals saw this view of the world, they would be happier."
Maybe that should be your mission then, to bring other animals up here. Then you can play chase with them all as well.
Indigo's eyes widened. What an absolutely splendid idea, he said. Now why didn't I think of that?
Because I did,
squeaked Porky.
I'm a clever pug.
You are indeed, said Indigo. I'll help you, said Porky eagerly. Indigo grinned at him. Now let's find a river to jump over, he said. They dived headfirst into the clouds, Indigo leading the way. They flew for several miles until they came to the edge of the town, where a wider river meandered its way through the land. They descended still further, swooping down like birds and dashing towards it before taking a giant leap and soaring over the band of water. As they went, they saw salmon leaping out of the rapids. "They can't jump as high as we can," said Indigo. They landed on the other side, as lightly as feathers. Porky now had a bit of a mental spurt. He ran around and round in circles, barking madly.
"That was brilliant!"
Indigo laughed at him.
"Let's do it again!"
So they did. And then again, and again. Then they found a forest and soared over that, Indigo's hooves kicking the tops of the trees. Eventually they landed in a little moonlit clearing.
"It's so peaceful here,"
said Porky, almost in a whisper. He suddenly jumped as something whispered in his ear. "Hello," said the fairy. She then proceeded to tickle his head. Fairies knew, of course, that pugs were particularly ticklish, more so than other dogs. Porky started giggling. He couldn't help it. The fairy tickled him some more, and his giggling turned into yelps of hilarity.
"Stop,"
he said between yelps. So she stopped. But no sooner had Porky got his breath back than she told him a joke, which made him almost wee himself with laughter again. Indigo lay down in the soft grass. Occasionally he nibbled some of the strands, but most of the time he just lay there listening to the fairy, who had stopped telling jokes now and was now telling stories. Porky lay there, too, staring at this bright little being and listening to tales of fairy mounds and waterfalls of sunlight. At last Indigo stood up. "We must be getting back now," he said. Porky sighed.
"Very well. Can we come back tomorrow night?"
Indigo cocked his head to one side. "I suppose so," he said. They landed back in Porky's garden in a short time later.
"Thank you, Indigo. That was fabulous."
He turned and walked back into his kennel. As he walked past the little mirror, he stopped and looked at himself. At first he thought it was his eyes playing tricks on him. He was tired, he told himself. Besides, it was dark and he couldn't see properly. Because what he saw in the mirror was not the usual reflection of an overweight pug, but rather that of a slim and very handsome breed. Porky blinked several times. Indigo now stuck his head in. "Nope," he said. "You're not imagining it. I forgot to tell you. If you fly with a unicorn's magic sneeze, it seems to speed up the slimming process. Don't ask me why." Porky's eyes bulged out of his head for the second time that night.
"I can't believe it,"
he said.
"Neither will my owners."
"So, same time tomorrow night?" asked Indigo.
"Definitely,"
replied Porky. When Porky's owners came out to give him breakfast the next morning, they stopped and stared. "What on earth?
"Porky, is that really you?"
Porky wagged his little tail and barked at them. "I can't believe it," said his master. His mistress was staring at something too. "Was there a horse in the garden last night?" she asked. "Why do you say that?" asked her husband. "Because there are hooves stamped into the grass here." Her husband went to look. "How utterly extraordinary," he said. Porky just carried on wagging his tail.